every person that we pass by on the street, every individual that we interact with in the day-to-day comings and goings of our lives, and every person that we will connect with throughout our lives has within them a fountain of wisdom, a fountain of knowledge that we can tap into at any time in our life, at any challenge that we face, if we're willing to open our hearts and if we're willing to push ourselves outside of our comfort zones and get to know some of these absolutely amazing and wonderful individuals. Today, I'd like to introduce you to one of those individuals. His name is Neil Calderwood. Neil is a father, he's a grandfather, he's a former auto mechanic, he's a former high school auto instructor who lost his job at the age of 60. And he shared with me some of the wisdom, some of the advice that he had for others out there who may go through similar challenges in losing a job at that age and how to lean on the shoulders of others to get through that. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Neil.
Okay, my name is Neil Calderwood. I was born and raised in southeast Idaho in the Tetons, a little town called Victor, where I grew up on my father's farm. We raised horses and milked cows and raised potatoes and alfalfa and all that kind of stuff. When I got to be in high school, I decided I wanted to be an auto mechanic. So that's what I did for 35 years. I attained master automotive technician status in about mid-80s. And when it caught up to me, because working on heavy equipment and things like that takes a toll on your body. And when that happened, then I got a teaching license, and I taught high school auto shop for a number of years, well, 15 nearly. I had a great time. I loved teaching. I absolutely adored my students. I did all kinds of fun things for them. Once a month-ish, if they'd show up at the school at 6:30 in the morning, I'd feed them breakfast. I got a Camp Chef stove, and I'd cook bacon and sausage and hash browns and French toast. And so one of the principal came by and he says, you know, you don't really have to cook these kids breakfast for them to like you. I told him I didn't do it so that the kids would like me. And he asked me why I did that, cooked them breakfast. And I says, because I want those kids to have an experience in my classroom that they will never forget, a good experience that they will remember forever. And the best part is that they remember. One of my students, this is a great kid. He was a happy-go-lucky kid, and he was feeling down. And after a couple of days when he came back into my class, he was still feeling that way. And so I put the rest of the students to work. And he came back, and I called him back to my desk, and I says, tell me what's going on. And he says, oh, I don't know, nothing. And I says, come on, I know you better than this. You tell me what's going on. And he says, well, my parents hate me, and I know they hate me. And I says, well, why do you think they hate you? And he says, well, they do everything they can to ruin my life. And I says, well, now wait a second. So they actually want you home before 3 o'clock in the morning, and they don't want you to use alcohol and drugs and tobacco and that kind of stuff. When he looked kind of funny, so I knew that I'd maybe touched on a nerve. And so I says, well, let me put it another way. And so I asked him, so you used to play soccer when you were growing up, right? And he says, yeah. And I says, from what your friends here at the school say, you were very good at it. And he says, yeah, I guess I did all right. And so I says, did your parents ever come to your games? And he says, yeah, they came to all of them. And I says, why do you think they came to your games? And he says, I don't know, I guess they love soccer. And I says, so you don't play anymore, right? You quit playing? And he says, yeah, I haven't played in about a year. And I says, do they still go to soccer games? And he says, no, I don't think so. And I says, it looks to me, it's pretty clear that they love something, but I don't think it's soccer. And so it was an interesting thing. You could just see the expression in his eyes and things, that the gears were churning inside. And maybe it's the first time he'd realized that his parents really did love him. And that's why I loved being a teacher, because I could influence kids in a good way like that. my end of my high school career, there was another teacher there who, for whatever reason, decided he didn't like me. Okay, well, okay, I just mostly ignored it and just hoped for better days. But pretty soon he got to be an assistant principal, and then I knew I should have read the handwriting on the wall. But he took a set against me and did everything he could to get rid of me. And lo and behold, I still just ignored him, but lo and behold, pretty soon he got to be the principal. Then I was really in trouble. So it was a matter of either I resign or I go to jail for assault and battery, kind of a thing. I don't know if you've been there or done that, but it was pretty bad. So I resigned. And that was probably the hardest thing that I've ever had to go through. I didn't have any prospects. Nobody'd hire a 60-year-old man to teach. But one of my best friends, he and I have been friends for 40 years. We lived in this same house for more than 40 years. He and another one came to me. I won't mention their names, but they're forever friends. Now, friends are, everybody has friends, but you have maybe 2 or 3 in your lifetime that no matter what happens, no matter what goes on, they're going to be there beside you. And that's the kind of friends these men were. And they came to me often, and they guided me through the hard times and the things that were challenging to me. And I had another career change coming. I can tell you that without some of those friends, I don't know if I could have made it. I got through it because, you have to do those things. You have to stand up, and you can't let the things like that weigh you down. And I reverted back into my faith and my church, and I got psychological help from my fellow church members and things like that. And basically, my friends of lifetime friends told me and made me understand that, I'm a good person. Things like that. When you lose a career, you go through a lot of psychological things and self-doubt and things like that. One of my best sources of support were my former students. Last year, for example, on my birthday, and my students all know me and through Facebook and stuff, and so I had over 400 people wishing me happy birthdays, mostly my former students. That they were a huge help. If you're going through some hard times, and everybody does, but don't think it's the end of the world, because it's not, and things will go through it, and my life is really in a pretty happy place right now.
Well, I hope that Neil's story was as inspiring for you as it was for me. I know one thing in particular that Neil alluded to was the importance of relationships in navigating some of the hard times that we face in our life. A lot of times I think we feel like, I'm going through this hard time, like I'm going to have to go through it alone. Maybe we think, if I tell other people that I'm struggling with something, that they're going to think less of me. Or maybe we think, well, I don't want to inconvenience them, and so I'll just pretend like everything is great when it's not. Or maybe it's our own pride that kicks in. It's like, no, I always do things by myself. I'm going to get through this. I'm strong. But the reality is, when we have those sort of attitudes, the only thing that it does is prolongs our suffering through that struggle or that challenge. The second we tell people, we share with other people, we receive wisdom from them, we receive support from them, and we have a partner to help us get through not just that challenge, but throughout the rest of our life, to add more meaning and greater meaning to our life. You hear Neil's stories about some of the kids that continue to bring purpose and happiness and joy into his life, and that's almost always the case with those relationships that we develop as we open our mind and we open our heart to receiving the wisdom that others have to share with us. All right, well, hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. If you have, be sure to subscribe to our channel so that you can be notified anytime we release a new story, new wisdom from those people that surround all of us. Also, we would love to hear your stories. If there was something that Neil said that inspired you, an insight that you gained, an aha moment that you'd like to share with the community, feel free to post that in the comments below. Share your story, share your wisdom with others and the community. And then last of all, if you know of anyone out there who maybe Neil's story could help, maybe they've lost their job, maybe they have a struggle that his story could help inspire them and encourage them to keep going through, keep trying, keep struggling, and they'll get there, please share that with your friends. Finally, the last thing that I'll say is remember that wisdom is always ever present around us in the individuals that we pass each day, those that we know well and the strangers in our lives. If we'll take the time to connect with them and open our hearts and our minds to receiving that wisdom.